Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Hello.
Could I ask you a quick last minute budget question?
Sure.
I'm noticing that when we look at our income, 43,800 fiduciary income. We had budgeted an increase of 2,000 there because of the interest income from our Hope sponsorship. What I'm realizing is that I think that could be redundant with the increased interest on our savings and CD on line item 45030. But I'm not sure because the way that account, like the way that we hold those funds, I don't have any statements or anything to reference for whether that interest, like which has gone up a lot, is the same as what we're talking about when we're talking about that increase from the other line item. And I didn't want to bump the budget up in a redundant way where we're doubling.
Right. I'm not sure. I wish I could answer it more definitively. I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's redundant, but I feel like I should just double check that with Tony and make sure.
Steve, I didn't get a chance to answer your email about the Vine line. I sat down with it open like 3 times and started typing and then got distracted by something else. But I wanted to let you know that it's pretty much together and Sarah's going to do a final run through of it next week. And then we're hoping to have it finalized and to the printers being printed by Friday.
That's excellent.
Next week.
Well done. May I have a chance to take a look at it, please? I have no interest in looking at the content. I just want to make sure
to be able to look at it. I can reshare it if you want.
Mom,
Thank you. There were some numbers.
I need your help.
How can I,
Yep, that'd be cool. Just share it. Thank you.
No. If someone's bleeding or something's on fire, I can help you.
It's a box because we want to play with chalk.
Ask Zanaya to help you. I bet she could do it. Shut the door on your way out, Lisa. Love ya.
Ooh, Aaron, that's not fair to change from a
Chalk, it's a
photo
priority.
into live.
Chalk, people.
What I did was I joined so that I wouldn't hold everybody up while I was making tea. So I'm here. Cheers.
Cheers.
I look better. Maybe I'll just
you. Oh,
like
Steve,
maybe I'll look nicer. It's like summer in the photo.
such a lovely photo of you.
Thank you. Thank you. A friend took it in celebration of mine and Kaylin's domestic partnership.
Oh.
Yeah, which like our certificates right up here on the wall. So yeah.
All right, I've been in too many like little
Almost
kid
5.
classes. That gets a round of applause.
We're coming up on a year of legal domestic partnership, but you know what? You can celebrate it anytime.
You know,
Mhm.
when Dave and I got together like a million years ago, I told him I don't want to celebrate anniversaries because it's just an excuse to forget. And you should just celebrate someone you love whenever you remember to do it. Because then it's a
Mhm.
special surprise as
It's
opposed
true.
to a disappointment when they were supposed to do something and they did not.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and a domestic partnership is tight because you can use it when you want to, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. So you can get on the same insurance. You can, what else can you do?
Not have to pay each other's student loans.
Visit each other in the hospital. Yeah, but without having
We
to pay
don't
each
have
other's
to visit each other. In the hospital.
but without having, I mean, like we can, like,
But not have
yeah, but we,
down to my traditional marriage right now, Aaron. So trapped. I have to visit him in the hospital if he goes to the hospital.
no, I'm on the opposite one for that one. It is nice to be able to have
Yeah.
that option,
I know.
especially for people who look like Kaylin and I. But
Yeah.
yeah, but we don't have to pay each other's loans if we don't want to. So
God, I wish
we don't
I
have to
could
file
do that.
taxes. We don't, like we do have to file taxes, but not together. Whatever.
Well, I think we have quorum and we can go ahead and get started with some of the starting our April 2021, not our final meeting per se, as we will be convening one last time in May, as we will discuss during agenda item 4D. But we will be having kind of our last opportunity to really get into the work that we do as a board tonight in this group. And I will call this meeting to order at 5:35 p.m. And I believe that Eddie, if Eddie is able to join us, will only be in briefly this evening. And so I can guess that minutes will fall to Margaret for tonight. And if you want to do a round of attendance, I can confirm that I did hear from Laura, who will not be able to make it tonight. And as I noted, Eddie will be possibly in and out, but has a conflict with another meeting at 6.
I feel like that counts just fine for attendance, in my opinion.
Alrighty.
Look and see everyone else is here.
Maggie, I'll also be in and out of the meeting as well.
Okay.
Does anybody else, other than Gwendolyn also mentioned having another conflict with a meeting, but beyond that, the remaining 5 of us would need to maintain our attendance for quorum. Does anybody else have any other conflicts tonight?
I would love to be done by 7:30 at the latest.
I would also love to, so let us get going.
I am I am here.
Hi, Gwendolyn.
I didn't have a conflict, but I am here. I just needed the link to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. So we have our consent items, our April agenda for tonight. I'm not aware of any updates to that yet. Anyone have any changes or updates to the agenda for tonight? Other than that, we also have our March meeting minutes from last month and our executive committee minutes from last week, along with our March 31st financial statements, which are the last version we were able to use to compile a review for proposing our next fiscal year budget. Any changes or updates for any of those, or a motion to put those consent items on the books?
I'll motion to put the consent items on the books.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right. Any opposed to that? I don't guess that we have any opposed to that. And then we've got a few minutes for a check-in tonight. We didn't prepare for one at last week's meeting, but I can't help but acknowledge the timeliness of our meeting tonight, coinciding with the just moments ago breaking verdict of the Derek Chauvin murder trial, which, if any of y'all missed it, was a full across the board guilty verdict on all 3 charges. And I can't help but connect that to the fact that I really feel like this bookends one of the most profound years, probably of many of our lives and of recent history, and of a very changeful, I don't know if that's really a word, experience for all of us as a board and as the VNA, and what we where we were headed a year ago. And I'm just, it's got me kind of reflecting on this year, and the tragedies that have unfolded, and the silver linings, and like the triumphs that have come out of tragedies as well, and just the ways that we're all kind of changed for a lot of these experiences, and feeling, I can't help but feel hopeful personally, I guess, if I'll go ahead and start with my check-in. It's been a it's been a bit of a stressful day. It's been a bit of a stressful year, but again and again, I'm reminded of reasons to feel hopeful. Listening to someone's soundbite on NPR the other day, who was giving commentary about just kind of thoughts about the future. They were mentioning that, like, by the year 20, can't remember if it was 2040 or 2050, that we would no longer have one race being a majority of the population in the United States, and that was what made them feel hopeful about our future, that we will be forced to change for the better. I don't know, I want to try to hold on to that hopefulness. I feel like today gives us a reason to feel hopeful. Maybe that's my naive optimism surfacing, but yeah, I don't know. A year in reflection, I guess, is maybe my theme I'm proposing. If anybody else wants to share any reflections for our check-in tonight. Erin.
Hi. I was posed a question recently from a friend that was on Facebook, which I have about this much tolerance for Facebook, so I'm just dipping in and out so every once in a while. That just said, like, how do I get involved? How do I find, where do I find my place? And I kind of wrote this long response to her, and basically the summary of it was like, find your VNA, which sort of the content of it was, like I said, like when I first joined this board over a year ago, Sarah knows this, I had a little bit of like imposter syndrome. Like I was new to the board life in general a little bit. I've been on little boards before, school and whatever. But I made sure to make a point to her that, this board in general has like helped me grow a lot and given me a lot of confidence. And also knowing that I can reach out to any of you, and it's definitely given me like a different voice when I move into other places in the community, even real estate, making sure I get on like fair housing review committees, and going like back to, I just joined the Gull Lake DEI committee, which was an interesting event in how I got there after weeks of calling every board member and staff member from top administration down, throwing a full-on fit, if you want to call it, and demanding things, which ended with the principal of the middle school, who was on maternity leave, being brought back in because I refused to work with the person that was in place of her, because historically I knew where his heart lied. And Gwendolyn gave me some good advice on that. So that was like a great example of being able to reach out to like connecting with the right people and understanding. But the outcome of that was that the middle school principal came back from maternity leave, and through my persuasion, immediately hired Tamara West to do. So that was a big win for me. And as a member of the full committee for the full school district now, it was one of my first pieces of input that I gave. So basically, I'm just saying that this board has given me a different voice, and you know, in my year of review, if we're talking about this space, then it's definitely, I'm very grateful for you all. And Gwendolyn, especially, thank you. And I followed all your advice, and it definitely got me somewhere. So thank you.
I want to second the following Gwendolyn's advice.
Gwendolyn, and of course, you know, Gwendolyn, you know, she you know, taking time out from all the things Gwendolyn does for me is, I feel very grateful for that, to even have the space to have been able to have the conversation with me. So I feel very, very empowered by this space. So thank you.
Definitely glad that I was able to lend my voice. I am, of course, you know, multitasking as I do, but I definitely want to say thank you so much, and I'm glad that I was able to support my fellow board members and navigating a system that does not typically tend to be equitable. So congratulations on a win. Any win anywhere is a win for everybody. So I'm glad that everything worked out for the best. Thank you.
I was very surprised after my 2-week rant that they even wanted me on the committee. So I kind of warned them. I'm like, you know, one of my big speeches started with, I don't even like this community. So, but apparently this is where the work is needed. So like, I'm surprised with, I had no filter. No, I couldn't even find a filter. So it was deep, and the fight was hot. Like, it's obviously just beginning. The work is now just begun. We've only had one committee meeting, but I didn't even want to, first I was like, I don't even want to be on your committee. What, you know, and then I'm like, Aaron, you have to, you know, like, where's the work needed? There for sure. So yeah, I definitely, you know, the actual event that took place, Gwendolyn's advice and you know, part of it, I was like, oh, I have to do that. Okay. All right. I have to do that. I have to do that. And so it was very empowering for me that, you know, and the whole, and, you know, with Damara, I was like, you know, this is me talking to them. I'm like, I already know who you need to hire. So like, she hired her like within 2 weeks of this whole event. So yeah, I'm very, very happy about that. Yeah, I'll be done now.
I can definitely say that this has been a fun year to be broken. But as we all know, or that little thing that you see on Facebook, we all have to be broken to be put back together. Unfortunately for me, I think this has been the very busiest and probably most needed time in my life to help others. So, not unfortunately, but it has taken a great deal of energy and a great deal of effort to maintain all of the cross communications and boards that I try to be part of. And I would love to right now give a shout out to the North Side Association for hosting a government grant program for housing improvement. It was probably the most informative and best assembled meeting that I have attended in a very long time. I could say probably a year. And it was an in-person meeting, and Maddie and her niece and Stephanie Villar did a great job at putting that together and making sure that their neighborhood knew what was going on. So I'll put that out there because it's definitely needed to let people know that they are appreciated. I think I've called everyone on this board to see if you needed a loaf of bread or a pat on the back. And I appreciate your guys answering my phone because I can sometimes be construed as that crazy guy on the other end of the line. And I just overall want everybody to be well and in a good place. And this is sort of my everyday being. So I felt very comfortable lending that support to others this year.
I can jump in. So this is kind of an interesting reflection point for me. I am coming up on the final month of my term, my 3-year term with the VNA. I was elected to my position when I was 22, and I am coming up on 26, which for any of you who have lived through those years are a 4-year stretch of life where a lot happens. A lot of changes happen. And I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to plug into my community and my immediate surroundings in such a direct way as such a young person, and to have to have a seat at the table and to have a voice and to get to meet plenty of wonderful, hardworking, and passionate and compassionate people whom I might not otherwise have met and connected with and worked together with. And it has been a beautiful experience to have been able to do so. It's been a tough year, the past year. And I'm really feeling good about kind of closing out this chapter for myself in the next month, helping out considerably with the election, and then taking a little bit of a break and kind of checking back in with myself and reevaluating my values and what the next few years of my life are going to hold, and figuring out what is next for me. So thank you for having been the hub and the home and the heart of my community and community engagement for the past couple of years.
I guess I can go next. Can you guys hear me? I got a new microphone to try to up the quality on the calls. So
It sounds good.
Yeah, I just feel
let's work on the content now.
Thank you guys. I'm a creative now. I'm gonna get on YouTube and podcasts and all that jazz. So yeah, this year I just feel so grateful for where I'm at and the position that I'm in. And I think the more and more I think about it, it's the more, how can I leverage that to help other people or lift other things up that aren't quite as lucky or in the same position. So yeah, I feel really grateful. I feel closer to my family after this year, and being Earth Week and Earth Month, more thankful for people coming together and just looking out after the environment, trails, things like that kind of help everyone and kind of bring everyone back to the planet that we live on. So yeah, I just feel really grateful and lucky, and kind of want to keep bringing that forward to others. So yeah.
I'll echo those thoughts. I'm very grateful, feel very fortunate, and I'm thankful as always for the VNA as a place for me to direct my energies and anxieties during these times, and to hopefully connect with other folks. And I'm encouraged and I'm thankful to hear the heartening words of the people who have spoken before me. And I think I think for years our efforts were so block by block and house by house, and in the past year we took some swings at some bigger things, and that I think speaks to the ambitions of the neighborhood association. And I've always felt like our reach should exceed our grasp, that we should always be going for bigger and better things. And just thankful that you all have put in the time and the energy when it's been such an anxious and uncertain year. So thank you.
Gwendolyn, did you want to add any more? I know you said a few words earlier, but that was in response to Aaron's comment, but didn't want to skip you if you wanted to add your reflections here. Uh-oh, wait, you're still muted.
Yeah. So, I don't want to go. So obviously, unlike, everyone else, this has been a tumultuous year. 2020 has really challenged me personally, professionally, mentally, and emotionally, through every spectrum of my life has been touched in some way. 2020 has done some things that have never been done. And so, with the new formation of some of the goals and aspirations that this association has set forth, I'm excited to be kind of in on the ground floor as I'm watching this board kind of develop and really start, as Steve said, to reach a little bit higher than what is right so easy to grasp, to reach a little bit higher than things that are typically done in an association. And that's why I'm really grateful to be a part of. With that being said, I think that there are definitely areas for all of us to strive to work for and towards. I too am hopeful for what 2020 holds. I am not as optimistic as Sarah is with the verdict that came in. I have a lot of mixed emotions. Obviously, I haven't had the opportunity to process them. But I will say that, I'm pleasantly surprised with the verdict personally. I've witnessed a lot of inequities as far as the qualified immunity that, police officers possess. And so to actually see a murder unfold in front of your eyes is kind of hard to not return a clear message and a clear verdict. But there's many verdicts that have not and were not and probably will not be returned. And so, although it is good that this verdict was just and fair, there are so many others who did not get that same justice. And so, although I'm glad there's so much more work to do, that I just encourage folks to not have a naive outlook on what this means. It's hard to deny something that's unfolded in front of millions and millions of viewers. And so it is a different day, and I do believe the tide is turning but it will not turn by itself. And so we, as change makers, have to continue to press forward and apply pressure to hold systems that are structurally racist accountable for the unjust treatment of Black and Brown people all across the world. And so with that being said, you know, I am optimistic. I'm grateful to be on the board, and I look forward to much good trouble that we're going to get into in 2020 and beyond, in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you for wrapping everything together in wisdom, as you have a wonderful way of always doing. And thanks everybody who shared all of that inspiring personal narratives tonight. That reminds me of how much I value this board for the quality of the incredible humans that compose it, and all of the things that y'all do out in the community, which is so much more than what we do here on this board. And also are the things that propel us forward, I think, as a board, and make us dynamic and make us want to bring change and motion into what we do here. It's all because of all of the change making that happens from what everybody is doing out there. And yeah, so thanks for all that y'all do out there. I think we all see glimpses of it, and it's good to remind ourselves that this is just a little snapshot that we see of each other here. And with that, we get to move into some of our boring housekeeping stuff. With agenda item 4A, starting us off, which hopefully I think could be a pretty quick resolution to something that we started getting into last month with the income verification procedure that Jen had put a lot of work into drafting. And we started to discuss last month after implementing that rent rate procedure, deciding to put this one forward to this month to allow for some revisions. There were some minor revisions, mostly typographical stuff and a little bit of wording from the version from last month to this month. But then there was one other update that actually kind of came in at the 11th hour with clarification in the end of that procedure. So Brendan, did you want to add something? Oh, he's stepping out. So at the end of that procedure, in the final 2 paragraphs, there's some bracketed wording in there that reads, the VNA will use this information to calculate your monthly income, which must meet or exceed 50% of monthly income, which I had kind of asked about before and got clarification on. And what we want to do is actually change that redundancy of the wording so that the last word reads rent, 50% of monthly rent, not income twice. And that was really what amounts to another typo that needed to be cleaned up before finalizing this draft. So if that is clear the way I described it for the minutes, let me know, Maggie. And with that update, I wanted to ask if anybody else had any more questions about that procedure from last time, or if we are perhaps ready to motion to implement the income verification procedure. Largely, this is a procedure to allow for I can definitely verify that this is a very lenient screening process for tenants, but it is a screening process for tenants, for prospective tenants, which allows us to actually have some income, some monetary threshold where they have to show some proof of income. It is a pretty low threshold comparatively to what most to what most of these policies involve. A lot of places will require 4 times your rent, you know, things like that, or other types of verification, you know, just lots of requirements and gatekeeping and stuff. But and the policy allows for, it creates the ability for us to bring co-signers into our agreements, which we've never really had the process for in the past. And so, were there any other questions or amendments to that policy, or a motion to approve that policy as amended?
Sarah, does
I have a
that actually
question.
meet the section 18 housing guidelines that were just amended for the city? As a verification of income, they don't allow for that as an application standard now, correct?
I'm sorry, can you say that question one more time?
That is,
Sure.
that is,
With the new section 18
Mhm.
A, I
Mhm.
believe that verification of income is no longer an applicable question that a new landlord or a prospective landlord can ask.
Verification of income is still something that is part of housing screening. The way that the Chapter 18 update affected that policy was to now allow for a broader variety and no discrimination on the types of income that are acceptable forms of proof of income. Specifically, that was made to allow for folks who have housing vouchers to use that voucher as to serve in place of a amount of income. Prior to that, landlords could say that if you don't have the capital, if you don't have the cash in the bank, then you don't qualify for our income threshold. But allowing people to say that my voucher counts as income allows people who are very low income to actually qualify for those standards. But definitely, I can guarantee landlords are still screening according to different income requirements. It's just that it has become a lot more broad in terms of what is allowable as an income proof. And in our policy, if I could quickly, maybe I can find the section that that speaks to that. There is a section that goes into quite a bit of different allowable forms of income, including pay stubs, self-employment statements and affidavits, bank statements, personal savings, loans, financial aid, and then support from parents, legal guardians, co-signers. And then finally, Jen wrote into here what is really kind of a catch-all for other forms of income, but it just says other forms of income. VNA will not automatically disqualify any applicant who would like to use a form of income not listed here. In the event that an applicant has an alternative form of income, the property manager will work with the executive director to make a decision on a case-by-case basis and will use the income guidelines set forth above to make their determination. And so it does actually allow for literally any source of income to be counted as income. As opposed to a lot of policies which are pretty strict about this stuff. I would say, I guess, just in terms of my own, what I've seen in my own field and in these policies, they are generally pretty strict about that. But does that answer your question, Jeremy? And I think there were a couple of other questions too. I know.
It answers my question.
Okay, thank you. And then Gwendolyn, did you have a question as well?
I did. So I did.
Right.
I did want to encourage, and I don't know specifically if folks have had the opportunity to read the housing equity ordinance. But I think that it may be imperative at this point for the board to be given the actual copy of that, just because it is for the city of Kalamazoo, it is a law, and folks that are not recognizing that it is an actual law in the city of Kalamazoo as an ordinance could be held accountable. So I think that it's important for the board as a whole to make sure that they understand what it's actually saying on its face. And I think some of the wording is a little bit ambiguous. in regards to it can be discretionary, and I think in such documents there should not be any room for discretion, meaning that it should be spelled out specifically what it is that will make you not eligible,
Hmm.
as opposed to the things that could potentially make you eligible. If that makes sense.
Hmm. So the way that it's worded, such that the VNA will not automatically disqualify any applicant who would like to use a form of income not listed here. If there's any suggestion for an even more kind of broad wording for that, we could propose a few changes to that wording. I feel like it's maybe that section, if I'm not wrong, that is kind of in question when we're talking about making sure that we're not kind of missing anybody, or anybody's not going to fall through the crack. In the event
I think that there is some. Yeah, I think that it shouldn't be more broad. I think it should be more specific, and maybe saying specifically that you will not be disqualified if you have a housing choice voucher, if you have Social Security disability, things that are specifically used to screen that population out should actually be clear that in this case, it will not screen you out. Because what happens is because people have been marginalized so much in the housing sector in general, they tend to not be forthcoming or not want to even pay an application fee, because even though most applications say that already, most applications say, just because you have a criminal background does not automatically disqualify you. When in fact, it does disqualify you when you write it down. So
Okay.
I would lean more towards being more specific as
That is a
opposed to
wonderful
more broad,
suggestion. Yeah.
which
So,
means that
go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's pretty much that pretty much sums it up.
Okay, thank you. No, that's actually a great suggestion. That's easier than kind of leaving it more open-ended too. That's a pretty simple fix, I think. It's sounding like what we want to make sure we're not missing is specifically what the vice mayor and all of those awesome folks at Isaac and on the housing task force have put a lot of work into making sure that they're covering their bases with that ordinance. And let's go ahead and use that as our guidance then to make sure that our wording doesn't conflict with or eliminate or not account for that work that's already been done, to stay aware of what we need to be doing in terms of creating housing equity, which would, to me, I think would sound like suggesting adding in an additional form of documentation under that section that lists the different forms of documentation, where it lists pay stubs, self-employment, other forms of income such as savings, loans, financial aid, support from parents, co-signers, etc. We just basically will be, under other forms of income, adding in another option, C dash whatever number that would be, to state that the VNA will accept this type of verification for folks who have a housing choice voucher, like a copy of, whatever documentation that involves, which I'm not exactly sure on, but I'm sure we can get the correct wording for that. But basically, does that address, I think, what we're thinking we're overlooking here? If we were to add in an additional acceptable form of documentation to include housing choice vouchers explicitly in the wording.
Mhm.
Was there another So with that
I'm not
kind of
sure if
proposed
it does.
amendment, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said it does.
I'm not sure if it's Gwendolyn or Jeremy. One of
Okay,
you.
I'm hearing everybody clearly.
Oh, sorry. There was maybe some feedback or something there. Okay. I think we're good with that. I thought maybe Margaret did somebody else have another question? There were quite a few that came kind of simultaneously there at the beginning. Or comment or any additional thoughts on that? Or otherwise, would anyone like to
Jasmine, you
would
can't-
anyone
that's
like
not safe,
to
honey.
motion to accept this policy with with those two amendments? The first one that I mentioned at the end, where we're changing, just typographically changing both of those second income to rent to read correctly, 50% of monthly rent.
Okay, so we need to remove or exceeded then also, is that correct?
Nope, it should say meet or exceed. The only change is that
then
it should say 50% of monthly rent, not 50% of
it,
monthly
okay.
income.
Got it. So you're
Because it says
changing
income
first
twice,
is-
and
that's
it
not-
doesn't make any sense to say income twice. It was just a typo, I think.
Calculate.
So that was the first one. And then the second amendment being suggested is to add in what I want to call section C. Let me be real specific. Section
Sarah,
2C4.
Before we go on to the 2C3, can I really nail this down? Because that change does not actually
Sorry.
make sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
That changes it to saying the VNA will use this information to calculate your monthly rent, which must meet or exceed 50% of your monthly income.
Sorry.
So that makes sense, but we're not
Nope.
calculating the rent.
Nope.
And then
Sorry. The other way around. It's the
okay, so then we need to change
income.
exceed. We'll calculate your monthly income, which must meet or exceed monthly.
50% of
Is that what we
monthly
want?
rent.
Okay, I think I got that.
Yep.
Um,
So it's the second income that we're changing to rent, not the first one. Sorry. In both paragraphs.
Got it.
There's
Okay.
income is in there twice, and it's the
yeah,
second. income.
calculate your monthly income, which must meet or exceed 50% of your monthly
Rent.
rent.
That's the one change.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully that part makes sense to everybody. And then the other amendment being that we were talking about adding in what would, I think, presumably be to section 2C. We are adding in another form of other forms of income to that bullet list there, and that being housing choice voucher. And I will leave it up to Jen to create the wording for exactly, I think it'll be similar to the way these other ones are worded, but I don't want to go too far into the weeds to try to, come up with a sentence form of that. I feel like it's safe to say that we will accept housing choice vouchers as a form of income. Okay, so yeah, unless anybody has any other awesome suggestions, thank you for that. That's just like kind of obvious and also really wise to just go ahead and be proactive and include the language of the day to make sure that we are supporting those initiatives, in our own policies. And with that, is there anyone who would like to motion to put this policy on the books?
Make a motion that we change the housing income verification guidelines with the 2 amended suggestions and add it as a policy.
Thanks, Jeremy. Does anyone want to second that motion?
Second.
Thanks, Aaron Harris. And let's do a roll call to finalize that policy.
Gwendolyn Hooker,
That's a thumbs
affirmative
up.
with the thumbs up.
Okay.
Sarah
Yeah.
Ruggles,
Yes.
Aaron Bensinger,
Yes.
Aaron Harris,
Yes.
Jeremy Turpinning.
Yes.
I will vote yes also.
Thank you, everybody. That passes unanimously, and we will take a minute to discuss agenda item 4B, which had a copy of a job description in our board packs. I wanted to take just a few minutes to discuss this and really discuss kind of where we're at in the process and what's being proposed and what the options are at this point. Steve has been in communication with the new director of community homeworks, Chris Pradle, who they've been discussing a possible arrangement that could allow for us to benefit from them hiring a maintenance technician, or I think they're calling it a construction manager over there, and just take advantage of a part-time contractual agreement with them to take on like a 25-75 split in the coverage of that maintenance person for our properties, to provide some on-call service and possibly some scheduled hours for the VNA and for our properties. That proposal that Chris sent over, it sounds like he's wanting to act on this position relatively soon, on a pretty quick timeline. And we are at the point of deciding whether or not to build a chunk of funding into our budget for this upcoming year to allow for this position. And what I guess I want to propose is that by building that allowance into our fiscal year budget right now, we are creating the possibility for this position to materialize. We are not fully approving the final creation of the position. I think it, just to be clear, like finalizing a budget is, and creating bandwidth for growth is the part that is before us tonight. Individual acquisitions and approvals of purchases and hiring of personnel, those are case by case individual decisions that are also kind of a board discussion to be handled on a case by case basis. So there's a whole process for hiring someone and contracting with them on this position. There's a whole slew of questions that I think we already have and that I'm getting more of by the day that are really great questions to involve in a discussion about what it's going to look like to potentially create this increased capacity for maintenance support, which Jen has been really kind of desperately pleading for a few years now from us. And those are discussions that are going to be for a future date largely. I don't think we tonight are going to tackle getting all of the nuts and bolts worked out of the position. But we can take a few minutes to really inject questions that we want to direct to the two directors, to Steve and Chris, to kind of resolve and kind of report back with the information that will be needed to move forward. But tonight, as part of the draft budget for this upcoming year, I have built in an increase to the maintenance budget of 10,000, which is only a portion of what the line item for this position, like the 25% responsibility of the VNA would be to take on a quarter of this position's budget, which was more around 17,000. The reason for that difference between 10,000 and 17,000 is because 5,000 of that I have like directly reallocated, if you'll notice, from sorry, I'm spacing on it right now, from a different line item, maintenance and repairs, under the property management budget, up to contract labor. And so that's not an actual change or increase of the amount. That's just moving from one item to another. And then I did decrease it by that other 2,000, just because I do think that when you have an in-house maintenance person who is responsible for your own repairs and labor, it is a lot cheaper than contracting everything out. And I feel like we'd be seeing at least a $2,000 a year savings by having increased in-house maintenance support versus hiring a lot of individual contractors for different jobs. So that's kind of my summary of things. I want Steve, if you could kind of give your side of like where you've come from and how you've gotten to this point with this process, and like what you're really wanting and hoping from the board at this point, and then also over the coming months.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for laying the foundation for that down so well. You know, we've had these discussions at the board levels before about trying to figure out how to assist Jen with some of the things that need to be done around the property. And I'm also on the Community Homeworks Board of Directors. I guess I should put that out there too. So as they were having this discussion and they were looking more at an assistant construction manager, I started to talk to Chris Pradle about possibly piggybacking on that opportunity as well. And we were able to, Chris did the majority of the work, but we were able to kind of draft this position that we felt was a really a nice opportunity for someone within the community. The pay was within the kind of within the range that we felt was good. And we've had this discussion, both he and I talked earlier today about it, and he is very comfortable with the VNA looking at this as a one-year pilot initiative and seeing how that looks for us, and that they are prepared at the end of the year if we say, thank you, but no thank you. They're prepared to carry on and fully fund this position, so it won't send them in a tailspin, and it won't put someone who had been anticipating this being an employment opportunity in a bad spot either. When we first took a look at this, both Jen and I thought it was a little bit, 8 hours a week seemed a bit much, but we really felt like if we had 1 year at this, 1 year to really go through and take a kind of a baseline of all the properties and do an assessment. And as Sarah mentioned, possibly take some things off of the docket or off of the work order before it got to heating and cooling or somewhere along there. We as we discussed this, Jen got really excited and I got very excited about it too. And we feel like this is a really good opportunity to come up with a good position within the community that helps support two organizations that I think would be very, very good to work for. And this really addresses one of the things that we're looking to do at the VNA and property management, which is to give Jen a few more tools or assets as we really look at or resources, I'm sorry, as we look at these properties as the tremendous assets that they are. And hopefully this evening, approving this budget will, approving these line items in the budget will sort of greenlight this project moving forward. And as it goes forward, I'll make sure to bring people into the loop in terms of when we talk about what the position will entail. Although Chris has done a real good job of laying out what they're looking for, ours will be basically much more of kind of a maintenance or a handy person. But as we move into the hiring process, I'll be glad to make invitations available. It'd be great to have VNA representation as well as Homeworks representation on there. But I think it's really a unique situation that benefits two organizations and can hopefully be a real good opportunity within the community. And I spoke to Chris within his role at the city as a commissioner, and I said, this may be something at the end of the year that he looks at and says there's a need within other nonprofits to have positions like this. And maybe this is something that the visionaries can come up with and look at as an opportunity for more positions and more opportunities and to employ more local and homegrown talent. So we're really excited about this. And I think if we can get this approved this evening, this will give us an opportunity to move forward on this, and we'll feel real good about that.
Thank you, Steve. And I bet that some folks have some really good questions and comments about this. Y'all always do. Before we get into your questions, I just want to kind of recap a couple of the questions that I've already posed to Steve when I reviewed this posting and this that came in an email that I've kind of posed on behalf of the board. And then I would love for folks to jump in and add to kind of the list of initial questions that we're going to need to kind of get a feel of where we're at with certain things in order to move forward on the position. One being kind of asking for clarification on exactly how this position is looking to be built, whether we're talking about this position is going to be fully contracted, fully in the employment of Community Homeworks, and then we're going to be basically like a subcontractor of this, and how the timesheets and payroll and everything is going to work between the two organizations. I think we need utter clarification about all of that. And then another thing, as far as like the hiring process and what that's going to look like, is there a hiring committee and who's involved, and what kind of level of decision making does the VNA have in the hiring process, and is it consensus-based decision? Are we talking majority vote, et cetera? And then my third question was just clarification on, in that job description, I noticed that it very broadly alludes to passing a criminal background check, and I asked if we could get clarification on what exactly that means, discretionary, that like that's a discretionary decision by any hiring committee, and what that means in terms of this hire as far as passing a criminal background check. What is the criteria for that? And I would love for folks to jump in just for a few minutes with additional questions that we would want to kind of consider, and that we would really want for our staff to consider during a hiring process for this position.
One thing that I can
You're
answer right now, I'd be glad to get any and all questions. The way Chris and I have talked about this being structured is they would basically bill us once a month, and then they would take care of all the other, the billing and Social Security, taxes, all of those things. And then we would get a monthly invoice from them, but they would take care of all the W-2s and paperwork that came along with that.
Yeah, so what are folks' other thoughts about this position in general? And then we're going to kind of come back to it as we go over to our next agenda item, which is just to look at the budget at large and the bigger picture things that we have built into it.
I have a concern about having onboarding a new.
Mom,
Stop,
is
just
this how you start to make a paper plane?
yeah, give me that. I'll work on it. You have to give me a minute though.
I already started it. I
You
just
did
need
a great
help.
job. Hold
with
on.
the
Unfold it
steps.
and then fold the two sides into the middle.
Like this.
More and then like that.
Like one before of like
I'm
of
actually
this.
talking in my meeting, sweetie. You
But-
gotta let me do this.
Oh,
Okay,
you
I'll do
just
one
need
side. Oh no, here, try that. And then, yeah. So do copy that on the other side. I'm not promising anything. Your dad's the paper airplane guy. Gosh. Oh, I noticed that the new position has health insurance, which we don't currently offer to the employees we have right now, and I feel like that's kind of conflict. That we can't, I don't think that's equitable to offer it to the new employee, but not to the existing
Mom?
employees. That's probably the one thing that stood out to me, and I wondered if maybe it might not be
Mom,
better
did
to
this look like?
hold on, to restructure it as
I am so
please stop, I'm don't talk right now, just give me a minute, I want to hear what you have to say, so if it's important, you need to wait till I can hear you. Might be better structured as like leaning a little more into it being a contract thing, because we already have a precedent for that where we use contract-based employees from Open Doors, right? As opposed to like us signing on to be like officially an employer of this person.
So I think we are talking about, like, on paper, we are not going to be the entity that is related to the employee in terms of like the I-9 or tax filings, and payroll and things like that. Is that right, Steve, from based on what you just said
Yeah.
just now?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are looking at kind of a contract labor
None of us want to
arrangement.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's what I'm guessing from what the update you just gave us, right?
absolutely. That's
Okay.
the way that's how I've set it up.
And we're talking about 8 hours a week, which, if I could just add one more piece of context to this, just as a property manager of almost the same number of units as what Jen is responsible for, although a little bit different style of property that I manage, which is all residential. But in my experience, as far as the similarities go, the more in-house maintenance you have available to you, the less you spend in your overall annual budget. And I really do feel inclined to estimate that building a budget of this 10,000 additional in expenses for this payroll or for this contract labor is really somewhat likely to pay for itself. I don't feel like we can guarantee that it will pay for itself in savings of just literally spending way less on lots of contract labor, because contract labor is very expensive. The rates are much higher. You're paying $60 to $100 an hour for labor, and you're paying upcharges on parts and installation, and you just end up spending so much less when you have in-house support for maintenance, for property management. And that being said, I can't guarantee that we wouldn't have, just an overall increase in expense, but it would definitely increase the capacity at which we would be able to maintain our properties. Just raising the bar, I think.
So if I understand correctly, so they're gonna bill us at the hourly rate of $22 an hour for 8 hours a week, not 10 as it says in the note, but 8? Is it 8 or 10? It says 10 in the contract, but we're talking about 8. I'm not, I just,
probably 10. But
10
yeah,
hours.
I said we
Okay,
said 8%.
yeah. I thought it was
realize
10
that
too. That's what I put in the budget, but
That's
so
fine. I didn't.
10.
I guess we had
Sorry.
talked 8 to 10, and it's
Good-
didn't realize that it
good
said right
catch.
in there 10. So yeah, absolutely.
10.
Okay, so just at the rate of $22 an hour, if it was 10 hours a week for 52 weeks, that would be $11,440 if we're only paying for that. But are we paying for benefits and tools and the truck?
Well,
Like, have we
I
figured out?
believe I want to say there was some of that included in the description that was sent. If I can pull it up real quick. Here it is. So oh, sorry, no, it is not in the one I sent. It's actually something that Chris sent in a separate message. But let me see if I can answer your question a little bit here, because I think I do have that. Give me just 2 seconds. That's another great question. We are talking about $22 an hour wage, $17.60 per pay period pre-tax, which is a total of $45,760 annual pay. Then you add on 10% payroll taxes of $4,576, insurance for 12 months of $18,000, which is the total position investment of $68,336. So that's where he got that number from.
Which number?
In that same
The
text that-
17,000 being our portion
okay.
of the, instead of the base pay, because you're adding on payroll taxes and you're adding on insurance.
So how does that mesh with us paying? So we're just paying 25% of the expenses once a week for the whole year. So we're taking that whole cost for the whole year and we're not billing it by hours. We're just paying for a quarter of the full cost of the year cut down by week.
A
Yes.
quarter of the full cost of the year, but a quarter of the hours per week, which is 10 out of 40.
Yeah, but we're being billed weekly or monthly or whatever for that quarter of the total cost for that month. Is that, am I understanding that
Yes,
right?
he has it. Yeah, he has this down as our monthly commitment at $1,423.66. Calculated to $17,084 or $17,084.12 over a year.
Right.
No, 12
And like I said before, I want to make sure we remember that what we're talking about doing tonight is creating the bandwidth in our budget to allow for this to not come up as an after the fact major expense that's going to throw our budget off kilter in the middle of the year. We're talking about building it in proactively now. And worst case scenario, it goes as an unused portion of our budget. Or I don't know if that's a worst case scenario, but that's a scenario. The actual creation and approval of the position is a subsequent topic to come up before the board with answers to any questions that are raised tonight or, you know, in relation to this topic. But there are kind of two sides to it. So we're talking about just the budget adjustment to allow for taking on additional maintenance support. And then what that looks like and when it happens and saying, yes, this is the person we are going to start paying is a subsequent decision, which is likely to fall to, you know, the iteration of the board that will materialize probably after our election results are complete and our new appointments. So unfortunately, community homeworks, it sounds like community homeworks fiscal year is like a January through December, and I don't think they understand that ours is turning over right now. So I don't think that Chris is aware of the slightly awkward timing of this, but it is what it is. So I wanted to just give the information to the board as soon as possible, and not try to pick up the pieces afterwards if we could avoid it, because it really does kind of address a longstanding problem that we've been struggling with to meet the needs of managing our properties.
I think it also might help to look at it as a pilot initiative, and that, you know, we may very likely come back at the end of this year and say we would like to look at what structuring this at 16 hours a month or some different capacity. But we're excited to have the opportunity to have a full year with someone with the skill set to really give us a baseline of where we're at, and to kind of piggyback on what Sarah said. When we make calls, we have people that it costs $90 just for them to walk through the door, and then they say, oh, you know, such and such switch needed to be replaced. Okay. So the hope is obviously that this is kind of an upfront expense, and that it has long-term dividends.
Yeah. Thank you.
If I could just chime in real quick, Sarah, President Rose. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of Steve and really implore folks to major responsibility for the staff capacity that we have at the Vine, to expect that a job is going to be done well with all of the other responsibilities that the property manager has and the executive director has, to be able to take, you know, the maintenance piece off of both of their plates and leave it into the hands of a responsible person that is kind of an expert in their own field. I think this is a long overdue request. I know that we've had this conversation numerous times since I've been on the board, and I've been on the board for a while. And I just think that, we need to call for the question, have a motion, get it passed, get it done. This is a simple ask, and I think it's very reasonable ask based on the monetary amount that we're actually going to have to provide. I mean, we have, Steve's done a really great job of figuring out a really creative solution to a problem that if it weren't for Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services, it would still be a cost that the Vine neighborhood would have to incur in totality. So I just encourage the board to call for the question, the motion, and the vote, and get it done.
Thank you, Gwendolyn. I think what I want to pull out of what you just said is it sounds like you're advocating for maybe for the board to endorse moving forward with this hiring process with Community Homeworks at this time. And not to say that I honestly don't think we're at the point of like approving a hire or like anything like that at this moment. We have the position is yet to be posted. I think they're going to move forward with it either with or without us. If I'm not incorrect, Steve,
No, you're right.
because they
Absolutely.
need this position for themselves either way. But the main part of it being that if we do go ahead and build this into our budget, I think we're really getting most of the way there to allow for an easy win once something materializes with this specific position. So with that, I mean, I guess we could vote, or we could hear feedback from folks on whether there is any type of consensus around that sentiment as far as endorsing, moving forward with pursuing the partnership with Community Homeworks on this position, or if we want to put it to some type of vote. I don't feel like it's really required under anything procedurally. Someone could motion for an endorsement. We've done that before. Or we could move into our budget process, which would allow us to officially.
I would like to make a motion to move for. I would like to make a motion to move forward with endorsing Vine Neighborhood Association to move forward with the relationship with the Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services. This is Gwendolyn Hooker.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, all in favor of that motion?
Community Homeworks, not Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services.
Oh yeah.
I apologize. You're absolutely correct. Kalamazoo Neighborhood or Kalamazoo Homeworks.
Community Homeworks. Anyway, the motion is to endorse.
Y'all know what I'm talking about.
We got it. Endorse the hiring process for the partnership in the hiring process of a maintenance person with Community Homeworks. So, all in favor of that? Oh, sorry, over here. Looks like Jeremy.
Aye.
All right, I think that's everybody unanimously. And that allows us to go ahead and jump into some nuts and bolts for our budget, which I'm going to try to not bore you with too many details. I'm really going to skip over anything that's under $1,000 change, to be honest.
Who seconded that?
Sorry?
Who seconded Gwendolyn's motion? I missed that.
Oh,
part.
that was Jeremy.
Jeremy. Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Come on, Maggie, you should know better.
I know, right? I can't quite type fast enough today.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, on that. And so I tried to put together in that PDF that I sent out in the draft, a user-friendly, digestible version of how to understand the differences between what we're looking at for this year versus last. And we have these unusual changes in our budgets from last year where we chopping blocked so many things out of it to try to create like total fiscal strictness in the crisis that we were in the midst of an uncertainty. And we are at the point of looking back over this year and really seeing that our fears did not totally materialize, and that we were able to kind of stay afloat, and even got a couple of boons, unexpected boons in our budget over the last year, and a couple of losses. Namely, we do have a little bit of vacancy loss and I guess what's called bad debt rental loss. But we are going to be coming close to our budget. We're a little bit I'd say we're going to be in the $15,000 range, which we actually wrote off at least that much when we did that forgiveness program last spring. So really, with the awesome work that Jen has done in managing our property and keeping everything at capacity, and also pursuing rent relief programs with our tenants, we really haven't seen that much additional after the forgiveness that we gave last year. So that is awesome. And I'm going to start in our income and just go over a few of these changes. And please stop me if you have any questions as we go. There is, in our income, there is a change in terms of our fiduciary income, our interest income. Thanks to Gwendolyn, we actually have this interest accruing on our accounts that's going to be an increase in the budget for this year. That is one of the benefits of taking on fiduciary partnership with the best of the best. And and so that's what you're going to see in those that first line item that you see a change in there. We do not have the capacity building fund was a one-time fund allotment for 2020. Unfortunately, we also did not see that materialize last year, and we therefore overestimated our budget, our income last year by that $9,200. So when we're keeping in mind the change from that last year to this year, I really feel like it's better to kind of think about that as just a net zero, where really we should have been looking at a total gross income of 28.8 rather than the 29.8 that we estimated. We have a change in our rent income of $72.30, lower than last year. Most of that is based on our move and the change in the way that rents accumulate now from our fewer tenants that we have in the new space. And I believe lower total amounts from renting to the ARC versus what we were receiving from Nova in the past. So there is that marginal decrease of $72.30 where our rents have lowered our overall profit. That's pretty close to what was estimated when we originally talked about the move, was about a decrease of $5,000 to $8,000, if I remember right, was the estimated decrease in total rents from moving over. And we all decided then that it was a worthwhile investment, and I really feel like we've gotten nothing but positive feedback about that. It has also increased our capacity in a lot of other ways that are not going to show up in our budget. We have a increase. Okay, so here's where, if we look at our expenses, here's where we're getting to what I would like to just take the most time tonight to discuss about the budget, which is I've done something a little bit bold with this proposed draft, and I have required everyone to participate in a pretty robust visioning process for aspirational budgets to build our capacity and invest in some of the things that we have long talked about doing but never really materialized, in terms of figuring out how are we going to pay for that if we really want to do it. last week we spent a lot of our conversation on the executive committee trying to narrow down to what exactly those primary aspirational projects are. And I think that we arrived at 4 things. And those 4 things are training and development. There is a kind of an unlimited ceiling on the budget that we could put into training and development. However, we reasonably tried to put a kind of a first baby step towards it and say, whether it be the beginning of a partnership with Damara, whether it be anti-bias trainings for board members and staff, or whether we're talking about a specific ask that Jen has put to us to obtain her real estate license over the next year, among other licensures and training programs, which she has specifically, explicitly asked for $2,500 for this upcoming year, budgeted for her development and training and licensure opportunities. That's one chunk of it. So that's number 1. Or I guess I don't want to put them in any order of priority, but the other one being an increase in our accounting expenses, which is also estimated at the $10,000 mark, based on a rough amount from our last audit, which was at this point over 5 years ago. My understanding is that prior to that, we had been completing audits roughly every 3 years with the expectation that we would have triannual audits. 2 years ago, gosh, I guess we could put the blame all on me because that was right when I came into the role, but there was a lot of turnover on our board that year, and we did not materialize the audit in the last couple of years that we had actually started talking about the year before that. It is overdue. It is imperative that we have a financial review at this point. There are more reasons than I could begin to name right now for ways and whys and hows we really, really have to dig further into our finances, whether it be from getting a clearer understanding of our kind of like post-property acquisition world of finances that we're looking at and being able to really assess what managing our property is costing us and making it for us, whether it be really making sure that as a fiduciary sponsor, we're doing our due diligence in understanding that we are and how we are managing all of our assets appropriately and kind of making sure that they're allocated in the right places. But there's just so many reasons, and I really shouldn't even have to name one because industry standard across the board is that we are, as a nonprofit organization of our size, managing assets of our size, we are long overdue for an audit or a financial review, as I guess what we prefer to think of it as, a larger comprehensive financial review. And it has to happen. And I would really, I would feel that it would be bordering on negligence to not really prioritize that over the next year. Number 3, we have this maintenance position, maintenance support, that we just spent quite a bit of time talking about. I think we can kind of put that one in the bubble there with the context that was created with that conversation. And then finally, in 4th place, and I think maybe actually possibly in 4th place after talking with multiple officers and staff about where we're at with this, increasing capacity for tech support, increasing our budget for tech support, creating the bandwidth to hire someone to manage our website or our social media or create increased hardware capacity, improve our software. Just there's a lot to be done there, but I also feel like we are farthest in terms of that, of the 4 things. I feel like we are farthest from the materialized, like ready to step forward and implement plan and acquiring quotes and bids and like cost analysis of all of that. There is some work to be done there. And so I feel like that one is the most opaque to try to estimate an expense for, and probably the hardest one to consider in terms of this year's budget. But I did want to include it because it is a pretty big priority in terms of what we need to grow our capacity as an organization and to make the improvements we've talked about for years. So those are the kind of bigger conversational pieces of things. Other than that, I just want to quickly go down the list and see if there were any other large line items. Just quick to note, there was an increase of $13,179.66 in our compensation under payroll. That is directly related to the new assessment after adding hours and pay increase for a property manager position over the last year. So that's now being reflected in just adjusting to our new reality in this year. Not anything that requires any additional approvals. And then in terms of other items that have changed by $1,000 or more, we have halved our Vineline budget because we did decrease the number of newsletters that was required in our city contract in terms of those mailings. Let's hope someday we get to the point of an e-newsletter, as we've dreamed of doing, which would be free, and we can eliminate that cost entirely. We have bumped our placemaking and branding budget back up to 2,000. It was 2,500 2 years ago. We zeroed it out last year when we went into crisis mode, and we are kind of at the point back again where we're saying we're going to hope to resume some programming this year. We would love to be able to order some merch and some promo items and things like that later on in the year. I apologize for jumping around, but I want to quickly go over the last couple of things. You know what, that actually kind of rounds it out, and I want to come back to those 4 aspirational budget items. I want to put it all together for everybody too into a bigger picture. If you go over to the very end of the budget draft, you're going to pretty easily see the difference in literally the bottom line. So if you look at that bottom line, you're going to see that we're talking about a $50,000 total net marginal difference between last year's budget and this year's budget. And that is directly proportional to the $10,000 change in the maintenance budget, the $10,000 development budget that's been included here, the $10,000, where did we go? Accounting, auditing, financial review fee that's been built in here. We have a $5,000 allotment that it has been proposed for our internet and website. And then you're also looking at that, again, that capacity building money that has been eliminated out, the rent amount that has been eliminated out from last year. Some of it is coming from there. But basically we're looking at $35,000 in increases to certain portions of the budget, or up to $35,000. I boldly included it so that we have to opt out of the things or decide together tonight what we need to say no to in order to make a budget that's going to allow us to achieve some of our goals, maybe not all of them, but the ones that we want to prioritize together. So I explicitly created it in a way where it's going to require a consensus decision tonight from the group. Thank you for listening through all of these boring number details and knowing how important they are to really making sure that we're doing our responsibilities as board members, because this is a really important part of what we do. So, reactions, thoughts, or questions about any of that, but especially about, you know, what I went into when we're talking about our budgets to create capacity for training and development, financial review, maintenance support, and possibly internet and tech support.
I say if we've got the money.
Gwendolyn.
Gwendolyn,
I think it's really. No, I was gonna just say, I just wanted to ask what your reasoning was to kind of clump those 4 items together, as opposed to moving and motioning or voting on them singularly. I think it is bold to make that type of a decision, just because you're talking about 4 really pretty major asks, I think,
Yeah.
as far as aspirations. So I just
No,
wondered
that's a
what
good
your reasoning
question.
was in doing
I
so.
apologize. I apologize if I made it sound like I was lumping them all together, but you're absolutely right. Those are all individual line items. Those are all separate budget asks, and those are all intended to be their own discrete portion of the budget. But I wanted to present them all together just because I feel like it's important to know if we're changing our budget in major ways, how much do we have? How much do we want to expand or contract? And where do we want to put it or take it away from? But yes, absolutely. Each one of those is its own discrete, changeable, adjustable in any direction in and of itself. And so just to be specific, the accounting financial review proposed increase is itself 10,000. The training and development increase is 10,000. The maintenance increase is essentially 10,000, although it looks like 15, but it's just because 5,000 was moved, but we'll call it 10,000. And then the tech support one of 5,000. And so those are each their own individual line item. Yes. And Jeremy, you had a question, or Gwendolyn, did that answer your question, or did you have any other points?
I was just seeking clarity, and I think that did that. Thank you.
All right, good. And Jeremy, and then Aaron Bensinger.
I was just going to say, if we got the money, let's spend it like wild women. Let's get this thing done.
Cool. And on that note, I just wanted to kind of repeat a conversation I had with Sarah privately over text, just to get it in the meeting minutes and get it on everyone's radar. And I apologize for the blender in the background. So Sarah reached out to me last week, 2 weeks ago, what's time, and asked about what kind of about an estimate for a cost related to our IT stuff. And I did not get her that estimate, so I'm sorry about that. Part of the reason being that things that I understand that we're interested in as an organization are a website refresh, with maintenance, social media management, hardware, software, and all of those things are going to be completely different line items. And they probably each individually would cost about what we are budgeting this year, depending on who you talk to. And, depending on what the RFP process looks like, at what level we are seeking quotes from individuals. And by at what level, I mean at what level in their career the person that we're working with is charging, assuming that we would go, I'm sorry?
I think
that was just background noise. That's all good. Assuming that we would go with like a contract hire or freelancer or something for some of these different things. So I'm just like reading through what this text that I said. Yes, I want to reiterate that there is no way that any one individual or agency is going to do an amazing job at all of the things that we need. I think that it is going to be wise going forward to plan to tackle each of those projects separately, with their own like unique budget and their own sort of clear understanding of what it is that we're hoping to get out of it. Just so we don't set ourselves up for failure or expect to I recently had a meeting with somebody who thought that I was a web developer, and I am fully not. There is a lot of confusion around those things. I think sometimes as the industry and the resources out there are developing. So I'm gonna go ahead and say 5K is probably one website, or a year of social media management services for an early career provider, for either one. Just so that we are being realistic about timelines and expectations for deliverables. I wanted to throw that out there, get it on the record, get it on the minutes. That is my professional opinion on that. That said, I feel like, 5K a year for the next 4 years, that's 4 projects. If we get it all together. But I think that that's a great starting point, especially as we are looking to expand our capacity in that area and kind of figure out exactly what it is that we want and need done. That's all I had to share.
Thank you, Erin. That's really, really awesome. You did respond to my question, just for the record as well. You gave an awesome response by text. You were very, very thoughtful, and I appreciate what you said earlier and took it to heart. And you provided so much more information tonight. I really appreciate you thoughtfully providing it on the record, which is better than I probably would have done in trying to communicate it. So that's all super helpful insight to use in moving forward. And then I also want to digress, if I could, for a second, to Jeremy's maybe kind of half joking question or comment from a minute ago, which is, if we have the money to spend it, let's spend it like wildfire. I love your thought there. And I also want to take it a little bit seriously and really dig in for 1 minute, if you could all entertain my analysis here again.
If you had all thought I was kidding, I was not.
Well,
I believe if
awesome.
we've got
Okay,
it, we've got to
I
spend
think
it
we're
to
on the
go
same
better.
page. No, yeah. So do we have the money to spend it? That's a really valid and good question. Like I said, like our marginal difference is pretty big looking at all of this, right? We are looking at a negative number as this bottom line of our budget. I don't think we want to come away with this with a negative number there. But one thing that we have talked about doing in relation, especially in relation to the training and development, which is a likely not looking at a permanent ongoing $10,000 annual expense. But this is something to get started with some of these bigger aspirational projects that we have talked about getting started with. I want to remind everybody that when we got that quote from Damara, if I didn't make this clear, or if you happen to miss that meeting or what have you, she was very gracious in making sure to clarify that, this price tag on her services is negotiable and flexible, and definitely something that she wants to help us in stepping into, in likely pursuing, funding partnership, funding supplement from the city. But it's something we've also talked about dipping into our endowment as a very worthy reason to allocate some of our long held savings, and probably being able to do that without actually diminishing it beyond the interest income we've made over the years, very much, by letting it sit there and saying it's our rainy day fund. It's been accruing, and if we're talking about do we actually have the money, I think the main thing to consider is we have increased our assets over a number of years now. We're looking at a budget that does not increase our assets. We're looking at a budget that uses our assets and invests them in needed resources and new opportunities. And we're talking about really kind of almost a break-even budget. Like I said before, I really do think that the maintenance budget is going to pay for itself. I really don't think that's going to materialize in a net increase of $10,000 in expenses. I really think that it's going to be far less than that, but I can't guarantee that. And I don't know it, I don't have all the expertise in the world about that. But I really
Alexa,
I guess we
timer for
need to take
25
seriously
minutes.
the fact that we are
25 minutes.
asking that question, you know, about the money to pay for it. Because the decision to invest in these things is the decision to put our assets on pause for a year, and really evaluate where our priorities are financially in a way that we haven't done. You know, we've really done so much visioning and so much deciding on directions, but until we start allocating our resources in those directions, or at least creating, again, I want to always come back to saying, like, we're not spending this money today. What we're deciding today is whether to create the bandwidth,
Alexa,
spend
what
this
time?
money on the resources
7:13
and investments that we've talked about for years and haven't gotten to the starting line with, because none of these things are free. And unless, I don't know, I mean, sometimes some of these things are free, but you got to be pretty savvy to make that happen. But other than these, before we get to the point of possibly looking at this budget for an approval, was there anything other than those capacity investment line items, those 4 things we've been kind of focusing on, that anybody had any questions on? I didn't want to overlook anything other than that, because you haven't had all the time in the world to look over this draft, but
Sarah, is
Yeah.
there a neighborhood enhancement line item for the small items like the Cedar Garden sign project, things like that? I was not able to look through that.
would, if that was going to fall under a line item, it would probably, you know, that kind of stuff could potentially fall under our placemaking
Okay,
part of our budget, and we are talking about increasing that budget back to 2,000. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to create $2,000 for just merch. Like that could cover other things like what you're talking about.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that we had something for increasing neighborhood awareness or things of the same nature.
There is a place for that. I would be inclined, Steve, I mean, unless you can think of any other line, any other codes that we would use, I feel like placemaking is likely where we would allocate that.
Most likely. I mean, I think we've got, you know, some community garden funds, but they're very, very little at this
They
point.
cover the water bill, basically.
Pretty much, right? But no, we've never actually done that and put something aside to support efforts or initiatives that come from within the neighborhood. I like that though.
Hey, Sarah, what was the dollar amount over budget?
Say again, sorry.
What was the dollar amount over budget for the proposed budget?
So in the proposed budget, as far as like beyond the break even point, yes, if you just go down to the bottom of the column for all like income and expenses, it tells you net income, which puts it at negative 6,489.59. There is wiggle room within some of these things. If we really wanted to get into nuts and bolts and try to create like a zero estimate, but really when you're talking about where these numbers end up, given our current circumstances, what our last year's budget ended up being compared to what our estimated budget was for last year, you know, it didn't line up. Like last year was an anomaly, and this year I can anticipate there's going to be a lot of other anomalies coming up in the next year. So when you're talking about a $300,000 budget in either direction, that marginal amount is it's not what we're going to really end up with at the end of things. But that being said, I don't know, maybe an economist would tell you that trying to break even in your budget is the fiscally responsible thing to do.
Yeah,
I-
so I,
I don't-
I just took a look at our investments too, and so what I think the responsible thing from like an investment portfolio, and I think they even said it at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, is the 4% drawdown. So that would be $4,500 a year that we could draw down in perpetuity from our investments without reinvesting that in.
Okay,
So if that gives an example, I mean,
thank you.
it's $2,000 off, or that's,
Okay,
a certain amount of money that we could invest with pulling off of that without actually drawing down on those funds. So
thank you.
it seems pretty reasonable, especially if we were going to pull some of that out or that much. It's not really actually taking away from the money we have there. So
Thank you. That's helpful context. And yeah, it doesn't change the fact that marginally from last year, we've been operating as this extremely fiscally conservative organization for quite a long time. And to put it in perspective, we've been operating with this pretty large margin of profit for years, as a nonprofit organization, as a property manager. And when we're accumulating profit and income from our assets, which are, investments and money from the city and money from tenants, if we're not investing it back into increasing capacity that's going to ultimately benefit the neighborhood, then what are we doing, right? So I don't know. Like I said, it's a bold new approach, and it's up to us to decide whether we're going to go this way for the next year or kind of keep on the course that we've been, or somewhere in between. Like Gwendolyn said, they're each individual discrete line items. We could approve some and we could cut some. We could go any way with it.
it doesn't seem, oh, sorry, Gwendolyn, you can go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it's hard to not. Could you guys give me a minute? It's hard to not win when you invest in the human. When you make a human interest investment, it's always gonna give a good return. And Sarah said it best. When you're talking about the profit margin that the VNA has increasingly made for many years. At some point, if we're not, investing in professional development of staff, if we're not, making sure that you have the capacity to do what needs to be done on our properties, then what are we really doing? And so at the end of the day, I think I love the idea, of Jen, going after the realtor's license. It makes perfectly good sense. Biden owns a lot of property, and hopefully, we're in the very near future, we will own more. And so I think that, the amount of money that you're proposing to spend is a reasonable amount of money. And let's be clear, it's not like the VNA doesn't have the money. They have the money. We have the money. And so, Jeremy said it at the very beginning of this conversation, spend the money on something that we're gonna, at the end of the day, we're gonna see a really good return on investment in people. And overall, it's gonna benefit the Vine Neighborhood Association and Kalamazoo at large. So, I would say, I wanna make a motion to be bold and go for the 4, aspirational projects that the President Ruggles has set forth, and begin to start, doing some things differently so that we can actually get some different results going forward.
Was that a motion to approve the budget, Gwendolyn?
Yes, sir.
That sounds like a
second.
motion to approve the budget with no changes. Is there a second?
I had something I wanted to
Absolutely.
throw in
go
to
ahead.
contribute before we, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, we can go to discussion now, or we can ask if anybody wants a second, and we can put it on pause and go to
Okay,
discussion
cool.
before voting. Did anybody want to second the motion?
Oh, I enthusiastically second that.
Kirby enthusiastically seconds the motion, and then we can go ahead and pause for discussion here. I think we definitely merit doing so for this one. It's a pretty big motion.
Yeah, I'm in a weird spot right now because I absolutely agree with everything Gwendolyn said, and I'm absolutely in favor of, passing the budget as is. I did want to mention though, just in the interest of getting it all on the minutes, I think, so the reduced Vine line budget makes perfect sense, given that we did not produce a Vine line over the past year, and that our marketing efforts are going to kind of change. That said, I did hear it said that an email newsletter would be free. And I would encourage you to consider keeping some money in the budget for an email newsletter, either to pay someone to do it, or if not, to pay for a really user-friendly tool to remove the friction if somebody does do it as a volunteer option. I think that because it's going to cost labor and time, or it's going to cost money, or it's going to cost both. So I just wanted to just be clear about the fact that I don't think we should go into an e-newsletter or any kind of newsletter assuming that it isn't going to be an expense.
Right.
That doesn't affect this budget immediately, but I had to get it off my mind. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all.
For real. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I don't want to, it was a misspeak to say that it would be free, because what we could really look at this as would be a $2,000 budget, which is a halved budget, still being more than enough, I think, to get us to an e-newsletter budget, with room to spare. And I think that that's the way we've been trying to head for years. And thank you for voicing that and reminding us of that. And that's also a piece of equity. That's, like creating resources that are more accessible are a way towards that. So
I think having an
Or the-
e-newsletter,
yeah, go ahead.
having an e-newsletter is a piece of equity, but I think ditching altogether 100%, having a mailing is not equity.
Mm.
Because I think there are people who do not use tech that would be excluded. And I think there's a value in at least having a minimal once a year mailing. So that how do we entrain people into the email system if we don't directly contact them in some way?
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. I wasn't going to let the Vine line die without a fight later on down the road.
I also,
at least once a year, maybe colorful, but we'll get to that point later.
Yeah.
Down the line.
just something at least, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
These are all great aspirational things. I think if we don't invest in ourselves now, we won't be able to continue growing. I think all four of these main expenses that have grown are really critical to us maintaining our trajectory. And I also think we have looked at these Kalamazoo Community Foundation funds as like the rainy day funds, and I would be hard pressed to find a time that has been more rainy than the last year, and this is the time when we should dip into that bucket.
It has been pouring. And that, $8,000 to $10,000 rental loss over the last year is something, that rent relief that we provided to our tenants is something directly resultant from the rainiest of days, a global pandemic, a economic crisis, and exactly the kind of thing that is to be remediated by our holdings and our investments that are there to safeguard against emergencies, which is exactly what that was. So, yeah. Keeping it in perspective, were there any other questions or discussion comments before moving to the vote on the motion on the table? Which was to pass this budget as is. Y'all are amazing. Let's go ahead and do a roll call for this momentous vote.
Sarah Ruggles?
Since I made the budget, I'm going to abstain.
Aaron Harris?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Aaron Bensinger?
Yes.
Jeremy Turpning?
Yes.
Brendan Maloney?
Yes.
Jacqueline Hooker,
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Sarah, I just want to thank you because you've done so much work over the past few weeks or maybe over the past month or the past few years that was 2020, 2021. Thank you. Really a tremendous effort. And then the way you laid this out was really visionary, and I appreciate it because these are big steps for me in my penny pinching VNA days. And I think this is really great. And this is why we did kind of make those budgets so tight in the past, was so that we could have some of these opportunities today. So thank you personally, and thank the board as well. I appreciate this.
Well, cheers to growing into 2021. And thank you so much, everybody. We have a few quick notes about our election coming up in May. And I want to let, I think Maggie and Aaron introduce the updates for that, and then come back around to a brief discussion about our officership election, our special director election, which is going to be during our internal meeting, which we do have a board meeting scheduled for May. I am thinking that I'm kind of wondering if that is actually going to be considered a meeting of this at-large directorship or the subsequent one, since the results are going to be coming in. I don't know if we've ever considered whether that meeting that tails right after the annual meeting, because it's right after the annual meeting usually, is actually like the preceding board, the outgoing or the incoming board. But we kind of have to pin that down this time just to make sure that the right people are in the room for that, because that's going to be a virtual meeting this time, and it's not connected to any annual meeting. But as of right now, we had talked about scheduling that for the final Tuesday of May, which is May 25th, which would allow for that to happen after the results are finalized, and allow for the appointment or reappointment of special directorships and officership appointments during that time. So I just wanted to voice that and say that, like, save the date, May 25th. Know that we will be meeting that day, and new directors will be joining us for that, and we will be at least putting in place positions and probably not much more, as is usually the case during that session. So whichever one of y'all wants to kind of provide some updates on where we're at with our virtual election. After all this, we've tried so hard and people have put so much work into all this for so long. We're just gonna get her done.
Yeah, so I would be happy to speak to that, Maggie, so you can take notes. I feel like we're probably both about equally informed on what's going on. The election committee, consisting of myself, Maggie, and Eddie, who is out of office for a little bit, I think, are going forward with the digital ballot. We were not able to produce a physical ballot to get on the Vine line to get mailed out in enough time to have people vote that way. So we have gone with the Google form solution for a virtual election. I would love to show off the virtual ballot that I've built if I can get screen sharing permissions, which I know Steve is working on diligently because I privately messaged him and asked. Steve, have you been able to figure that out? He's working on it. He's got his working face on. You're muted. We can't hear you. You can also, if it's easier, if you want to click on the triple dots by my photo and give me the host permission, I can handle it myself as well.
Oh, yeah, that worked out for us in the past.
So I think what I'll do is I will kind of scroll through and show you all how the virtual ballot's going to work, and then I'm open to feedback on it. Absolutely, open to a little bit of discussion. To if there are any considerations, perspectives, or things that we should include that hadn't come up between those of us on the election committee. Would love to chat it out. And I also would like to, and this is kind of off the cuff, Maggie and I didn't talk about this, would love to talk about doing whatever we need to do to get approval to push that live and begin soliciting votes as soon as possible. Not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think we've talked about what the voting window would be. So, but a month feels pretty appropriate to me to make sure that the information can get to everybody in enough time.
Yeah, so the goal was to have the ballot live before the Vine line gets into people's hands, so that the minute someone reads the Vine line and sees that they can vote, then they can vote. And so Aaron pretty much has the thing ready to go live now, as long as we're happy with it. And the Vine line, it should be going in the mail at the end of next week if everything goes smoothly between now and then. We have a 10-page draft that Sarah and I are working on whittling into the 4 or 6 or 8 page version that gets put together by the printer.
Yeah, and I'll
We talked
also,
about having it be at least from May 1st to May 21st. So there's like a 3-week window. So there's lots of time for people to vote. The time won't be a constriction.
yeah, and I'll also add that it'd be great to have a little bit of lead time for what would be kind of a de facto beta test of the ballot, just maybe a few days at least to publish it and test it out and see if there's any quirks to work out before posting it publicly to the world or to the neighborhood.
That makes a lot of sense. Steve, how's it coming? You are muted too. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I thought I had done it. I went to the security shield and pressed share the screen.
I have host disabled participant screen sharing still, unfortunately.
Okay. I checked it. I clicked on it and.
Can you try?
That's frustrating. Oh, I have it. It worked.
Okay.
Oh, it just turned back off. All right. So I think you removed the check. Go ahead and add that check back in.
Oh gosh, we're so
Okay.
close.
Try it.
We're good. I got it. All right. Amazing. Teamwork. All right. I'm gonna make this a full window. Can everyone who is viewing the screen see the screen? Okay. All right. So this is a Google form, standard Google form. How it's going to work is we have this information here, which I'm happy to read aloud. VNA Board of Directors 2021 election ballot. This is the official 2021 virtual election ballot for the Vine Neighborhood Association Board of Directors. Our mission is to cultivate and strengthen a sense of community and an improved quality of life for the residents of Vine. We strive to accomplish this by distributing resources, advocating for our residents, managing properties equitably, and supporting local artists and innovators. Voting closes on May 20th, 2021 at 11:59 p.m., which was an assumption on my part. So please correct me if that's wrong. Every individual who works, resides, or owns property in the neighborhood is entitled to submit one ballot for the purpose of selecting a new board of directors for the association. By voting in this election, I affirm that I am either a resident of, property owner, or employed within the Vine neighborhood as defined by the following boundaries: bounded on the east by Burdick Street, on the south by Crosstown Parkway and Howard Street, on the west by Oakland Drive, and on the north by Level Street, including the properties which front the east side of Burdick Street and the north side of Level Street. So this is what folks will see when they click the link to open up the ballot. It will ask them for their email address, which I'm going to do a couple test runs for you all to kind of see how the functionality works, get a full scope of how it's going to go. Add your email. This is Aaron. Test run 1 is my name. So then we have a question that is, are you a resident, property owner, and or employed within the Vine neighborhood? Repetition of the boundaries. If the person selects no, I'm not, and then adds their address, which mine is going to be Steve's house. You hit next, and you will be told, sorry, but you are not eligible to vote. Only individuals who work, reside, or own property in the neighborhood are entitled to submit a ballot for the purpose of selecting a new board of directors for the association. They will hit submit, and that'll be it. It'll be gone. unfortunately, that's going to say thanks for your vote, so that's kind of a bummer. Now, if we were to look at, let's see, let's make it actually work. If we go to, oh goodness, okay, here's another preview. So we're going to do it for real one this time. Put my email in. I'm going to do Aaron's test run too. Yes, I affirmed that I do live in Vine. I live at 623 Axtell. That's public information. Next. If I selected yes, then it is going to take me on to meet the candidates. And it says the following 7 individuals listed in alphabetical order by last name are running for 6 open board director positions with the Vine Neighborhood Association. They have each submitted a statement for your consideration. At the end of the section, you may vote for up to 6 of them. And then in alphabetical order by last name, I have all of the candidates. So we have names, a photo, each individual's third person statement of what it is that they do. And then smaller below that in quotation marks, their personal statement in first person about their commitment to the Vine neighborhood. I really would have loved to have been able to put the photo next to the text. However, this is just the formatting limitations of Google Forms. So yeah, each individual, we've got the name, photo, and the statement. Say hi to Brendan.
Hey, Coach.
Go Hornets.
Mhm.
There's Jeremy, professional MacGyver. Chelsea and Margaret. And then this section, you can vote for up to 6 candidates to join the board of directors. Sarah, that is how the election is supposed to run, correct?
That looks wonderful to me.
No, I mean like specifically like you get 6 votes, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So what's going to happen is you can check up to 6. If you try to check the 7th one, you will get stopped. You won't be able to check more than 6. So sorry, Maggie. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to do the top 6. Folks can select to be sent a copy of their responses. If not, submit. You get a thanks for your vote. And then on the back end, what we're going to be able to do, and this is going to be so the sort of interpreting the results is going to be on myself and Eddie, because we are the members of the election committee who are not up for re-election. Where it's going to go is directly to this response form, which those of us who have the login for the Vine Neighborhood Secretary email have access to. We will see who has responded, and we will be able to see what their answers were for each question. So if we go by summary mode, let me see. If we get, oh, this is just by question. Okay, so if we go to, are you a resident? We can easily go back through here, select everybody who said that they weren't and delete those options so that we just have less noise happening. We can also screen by, people said, yes, I affirm that I'm a resident. We can cross-check their addresses to make sure that they do reside within Vine. And then what's going to happen here is down here, we're going to have kind of the voting results. So we will be able to look at this without seeing who specifically voted for whom, which will be nice. A little bit less clutter that way. But after all the votes come in, we will be able to see who obtained which percentage of the vote, as well as how many votes went to each individual, which will help us in deciding who serves a 3-year term versus a 2-year term. I think that sort of the obvious question, right, is what's going to prevent people from submitting more than one ballot? My answer is we are asking for email addresses. I doubt that this is a high enough stakes election that folks would be sort of coming up with additional email addresses to submit extra votes. We are asking them to affirm that they're only going to submit one ballot. And I think that doing this based on, I think if you trust people, they become trustworthy. And we also can go into the responses, and if there are duplicates, people using the same name or the same address voting multiple times, we can choose to remove those responses. So that's what I've got. What do you think?
Looks great, Aaron. Thank you for all that hard work.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
outstanding. Thank you both.
It is far better than I could have imagined. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
It is beautiful.
It's
Cool.
amazing.
Aaron, my one thing is, so you talked about filtering out, you know, if someone used the same address a bunch of times or something like that.
Mhm.
How would that work with, you know, if you had multiple people per household, or, you know, someone who maybe shares an email address or something like that?
Sure. I personally trust in my judgment and Eddie's judgment to make those calls. However, I am happy to set up a contingency if there are any, if anything fishy happens. I am not sure what that would look or sound like. I think that that is probably a good idea because of Murphy's Law. So it's probably something that we should talk about as an election committee. And the election committee will be meeting with the EC next Tuesday. 2 Tuesdays from now? 2
Yeah,
Tuesdays
it's
from now.
the
May
4th.
So, yeah.
May 4th of May.
Mhm.
Hi,
Yeah,
everybody.
Hi.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So does the election ballot take into consideration that there may be more than one person in the household casting a vote, or
Yes.
is it one vote per household?
It's one vote per person. So both you,
Okay.
Gwendolyn, you and Brendan bring up a great point that yes, obviously, there are probably going to be many votes coming from the same household because it's fine. And a lot of folks co-live, a lot of folks have roommates and have
Exactly.
multi-generational homes. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely will not be deleting multiple votes from the same address.
Okay,
At
cool.
all. We will not be doing that. However, if I see multiple votes of the same name, same email address, and same address, that is going to raise a flag.
Right.
However, I
Exactly.
do think it's a good idea to have perhaps more of a check than just Eddie and myself, especially if it's a vote that's going to be like a game changer in terms of the election. So that's definitely something that we will talk about at the EC election committee meeting next week. Yeah, thank you both for bringing that up. Good point.
Another question,
Yeah.
follow-up question. So for as far as businesses and people that may not live in the Vine but work in the Vine, how are they receiving, is the main way that people are going to be finding out by the Vine line, or is there other mechanisms for people to find out about the voting?
Yeah, good question, Gwendolyn. So the link will be on the website and the Facebook page, and I'm going to send it out to our nascent email list, as well as being in the Vine line.
Basically, it's the same outreach that we've done for most elections, except that a lot of it comes with a direct link to the ballot, which I think will probably increase turnout, I would think, just because people will be able to just vote right away. As soon as they know the election's happening, they can just go ahead and submit a ballot.
So I just wanted to note that I know of at least 2 new businesses that are in the Vine, and I just want to make sure that, so Lockett Jones Realty is receives that ballot, and now the name escapes me, but they're in the place where the Christmas Emporium / whatever else it is, they're in that building. One of them is in that building, and then there's Lockett Jones Realty. That's a new business owner that just started business within the last year in the Vine neighborhood. So I'm trying to ensure that there's some way that we know that they are in our neighborhood, and that there's some way that we ensure that they get the ballot.
Steve, does Tammy at the printer do we have a system for updating the mailing list from year to year that we've used in the past?
You just have sent new addresses to her, and just they roll it into what they have, their mailing list.
And how do we determine like new residents and new addresses and stuff like that?
I think in the past we've just gone over the mailing list and tried to make a kind of a decision based on what we knew.
Okay, I would think that if anybody has ever occupied like a business or a residence address in the past, they'll still get the Vine line because they're all issued to resident of. None of them are specific to a name or a specific resident. Like my Vine line comes to resident of my address. And so even with the businesses, I would assume that those will still get a Vine line. If there was even anybody else occupied in that space before. So it's only new spaces that would need to be added, right? Is that,
Did that, Gwendolyn, did that building get purchased, the former Fresh and Clean on Axtell and Lethbridge? The old,
Yes, and I guess
the owner, the
What'd you say,
previous
Steve?
owner was a board member, so it doesn't guarantee that they get one, but I can walk one down there too. We always get some for the office or to hand out, and that's on my walk home, so I can guarantee that I can hand deliver one down there.
Yeah, I guess my thing was, I think that it's not a nationwide election or anything, but I think we do need to have I guess this is where the tech support comes in at, making sure that we have addresses, at the very least addresses, preferably names of business owners and residents are in our neighborhood, as opposed to this assumption that they'll get it. Because a lot of times it doesn't happen. I know that Twala has not gotten any Vine lines since she's been checked. And I can if that's a similar enough but going forward, I think that these reasons we should try to figure out better ways to communicate information to residents. I don't know what it is, but I know that everybody is on Facebook and keeping up
it's probably worth revisiting our mailing list that we give to the printer.
They sent,
and reviewing the business, like the business directory side of that, just to make sure that we haven't like overlooked, because the residential addresses, I'm guessing are a little bit easier to catalog than the business addresses, which I'm guessing probably change more. I would think that unit numbers and suite, not just like, you know, moving around from one small space within a unit to another could create issues with mailings over the years.
Gwendolyn, do you off the top of your head know the address of either of those places that you were asking about?
I do not.
Okay. I have the list of what I have. I'm looking at it right now, and there's like 25, almost 2,500 addresses on it, with a few, and there's a few tacked on at the end that are sort of not in the neighborhood. And I did intend, before we sent the mailing, to query the printer about whether this list included commercial stuff, and then to make sure that that got added in. So thanks for bringing that up. It was, because I also know like the Fresh Market is new since we've had a Vine line mailing go out too, right? So there's a bunch of new businesses in the neighborhood, and the Ace Hardware, and you know, yeah. So it has been on the radar, but thanks for bringing that up, and I will make sure specifically to check on who's in the Christmas store and that Twyla Lockett is in there too. Thank you for bringing that up.
Awesome, thank you.
I think too, to speak to the distribution strategy, which we haven't explicitly discussed as an election committee yet. I think it makes a lot of sense for sort of the first missive to be to send the ballot to the word contestants is popping in my head. The candidates, the contestants, no one's gonna have to sing. To the candidates first thing, to let them know, like, here is the ballot. Please take a look at it. Make sure that everything is, thank you. Make sure that everything is spelled right. Brendan was listed as a healthcare administration, and I did correct that to healthcare administrator, just so for the utmost clarity. So I think that sending that out to everybody who's running, first of all, and then those folks will naturally distribute it to their networks via email, via social, word of mouth, things like that. So I believe that on the Vineline mailing, there is a shortened link like printed on there that is like just a few characters and words, so that it would be conceivably easy for someone to go to just a web browser and type in, you know, tiny link / Vine neighborhood or something along those lines, so that actual physical word of mouth will also be a tool. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It's we got to make sure that we get as many people aware of it as possible. And I am really hopeful that because this is a digital ballot and because the voting window will be open longer than just a few hours, we hopefully will have really, really good turnout. So we'll see.
Well, on a related note, I need to be emailing the candidates with it before the end of the week with the information that needs to go out for our election procedures. So that would be a good thing to combine with that informational update about the balloting.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I'll make sure that you have, well, you do have access to the link because you have the shortened link. We should triple check that that's still functioning as well with the updates to the ballot. But I would be happy to be in touch about that in the coming days because I do need to hop off here at 8. So
yeah, and I have to finish everything up before Friday because I'm going to be on hiatus for a little while. So let's definitely get back together this week. And thank you so much for making such a beautiful election procedure after all of this cluster of a year of trying to make something happen. And
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, I think it is the best we can ask for and hope for at this point. And other than that, I just have the reminder that yes, we will be meeting on May 25th as a board to replace our usual after meeting to elect officers and special directors or reappoint. So remember that, save the date. You'll get a Zoom invite for it. And
can I just put a plug in too that, so unlike other years when we have had the annual election directly followed by election of the EC, Sarah and I discussed today, and I think it's a smart idea, and I think you'll probably agree, Aaron, that at that meeting, we're going to try to appoint as many of the special directorship seats as we think is feasible so that those people can stand for EC seats if they wish. So Gwendolyn and Aaron, bring your A game. You better be there.
yeah, actually, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good reminder to just tell everybody about. Because special director, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
We have 7 people running for 6 seats, and in the past, we've often considered non-successful candidates for election to the board as appointments as special directorships. So that's another one to consider. And if y'all have any other people that you think would be good candidates for a special directorship appointment, and maybe now is the time to rally those people and maybe get them to send us a resume or something in advance of the meeting so we can fully consider our options and really hit the ground running, so that in that first meeting in June, we have our full board in, and that will also help us facilitate using that awesome little pot of money that we talked about allocating for training. We can maybe send ourselves with our new board members for some trainings, maybe with Damara or whatever, right? Like the sooner we get all of us there, the more well-trained all of us will be in the end.
For sure. Yeah. So just to kind of put a correction in place for something that I feel has always been a little bit of an oversight in the past. The bylaws do allow for special directors to serve as officers, and so we've kind of de facto disallowed that opportunity by appointing special directors after we elect our officers. And so this will give us the opportunity to combine that process and create a more equitable, open opportunity for everybody. So yeah. And also, as a reminder, special directors can be nominated and appointed at any time. And so those 4 seats, of which 3 are currently occupied, and it is to be determined at least I know at least a couple folks are wanting to stick around. Thank goodness for you awesome people who want to stick on as special directors, even though I couldn't twist your arms into coming on as at-large directors. We appreciate that. But yeah, bring your nominations, bring your nominees. And with that, I don't know if Steve, you want to take a few minutes to, unless there was any other questions, election updates. We've covered so much ground on all these things tonight. But Steve, I don't know if you wanted to take a few minutes on a recap of your report, which was in the board pack.
120 seconds here. Yeah, it's mostly in the report there. Earth Day opportunities will be coming out tomorrow, and Earth Day will be the 22nd this week. We'll do some work down at Davis Street Park. There'll be some opportunities at Axtell Creek Park as well. Big changes in the neighborhood next month will be signage will start to change over for parking, which will be exciting. Hopefully be more in line with the actual usage. It's snowing now. That's all. Other than that, I'm not exactly sure how else to wrap up this long day. Thank you all for the efforts. I really appreciate it. It's been a long one.
We're slim on committee reports tonight. Were there other updates or reports that or tidbits that folks wanted to inject into this part of the agenda?
You know,
We've
for an
got a
event
lot.
Update. You know, we've got Maya James has been working. We've been working with Maya James on a Juneteenth event, and then I know that there's some art hop events that have landed, have already been slotted, but I don't recall exactly which ones those are. But the Juneteenth event is the only other one that I'm aware of upcoming.
Okay. As always, if anyone has comments, announcements, questions, or discussion items, we can take a few extra minutes. Or you can refer to the few things that are the very few things that are scheduled coming up, which is mainly our meetings and our spring cleanup event. And call it a night and leave the opportunity for folks who do want to stick around for I guess it would be an 8:01 at this point, to do so, but officially adjourn our April meeting.
Sarah,
Unless,
do we
yeah.
have a liaison officer yet? I have not got to speak with one, and I went to every community cares meeting. And considering a shooting happened about 100 feet from my front porch, I would love for the city to actually do something as far as public safety, because I feel that that's quite a concern. And when I called, they said they had somebody in custody, but we all know that that person in custody wasn't the actual shooter. So the way that the information is going out from the city seems very distorted. And I feel that as a board member that is right in the thick of it, maybe they should have a better response to the neighborhood.
Jeremy, you and I can talk. I can put you in touch with the neighborhood liaison officer tomorrow. I've got a community homeworks board meeting. Is it 9:30, Brendan, or 10? But I'll be able to get in touch with you and send some information your way, and you and I should talk. I spoke to, yeah, we should talk, and I'll follow up with you on that.
Okay, because I'm kind of pissy about the matter, because it doesn't seem like anything's being done, and for as much time as I invest in the community, they're not putting much effort into investing back.
It does feel like we are kind of seeing the loss of Ryan in these few months after he's been gone, and just kind of the void that was created by breaking the connection that he created between us and the force. So I encourage that conversation between the two of y'all. I also encourage, in relation to the other noted item from your report, Steve, about you had put in there Rose Street, and I wasn't sure if it was meant that there was stuff on Rose Street, but I think you were talking about the Dutton Street sort of different issues that have come up. And I really just want to, I've heard from a couple of different folks about issues on Dutton. Heard from you, and I really want to encourage us to keep that conversation going and try to create an opportunity for more more of the neighbors to get together and communicate their concerns in a bigger conversation. Because what I'm realizing is that there are a lot of different threads of who is dealing with what issue and who has what angle on how to deal with it. And it feels very much like a very fragmented public safety like bubble of concerns going on over there
Well,
that
they
would
want
really
to
benefit
know.
from
I
consolidating.
spoke with oh, I'm trying to Latanya today, and she asked after the conversation that I had with the chief last Thursday. She asked she wanted to know if I thought it would be appropriate for public safety to have a town hall meeting at this point. And quite honestly, Sarah, I wanted to wait to see how everything went down this afternoon before I rolled out the welcome mat for
For
public
sure.
safety for a town hall meeting.
For sure.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm not surprised that they haven't reached out to Jeremy, but you know, I'm seeing them everywhere and they're handing out cards everywhere, but of course they don't actually get to a person that has some inside knowledge. What I'm hearing is, yeah, there is a desire to have a town hall of some sort. So I'll follow up with Latanya and we'll get going on that. I'm not sure what that'll look like, but what I said to her is that we'll just kind of be in a holding pattern. We'll check in with some of the different groups that have talked about some of the things that are going on within the neighborhood and see if this is something that they wanted to do. But quite honestly, I wanted the wiggle room, depending how things went down this afternoon, to either welcome them on board or not. And that's also why I haven't sent out anything with like public safety and Earth Day for Thursday. Just kind of wanting to hedge my bets on that. But absolutely, you know, we'll take community cares back under our roof so that we're putting the Zoom invite out for that. And you know, Jeremy, we didn't have one in April because the officer was unable to attend. We did have one in March, so that was his introduction, I guess, to the new neighborhood liaison officer. But I'd be glad to pick that up for sure.
Okay, because I've tried to make that meeting every single time, and of course, when something big happens, it's a ghost
Yeah.
event. So
Yeah, my morning tomorrow is filled up with community homework stuff, but I'll send out some emails with contact, and then you and I should talk too.
okay.
Okay, I'm gonna step.
Oh, you muted.
I did. I muted my exit.
Yeah. Good night, Steve.
Good
Thank
night.
you,
Thank you.
everybody, so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
out as well, and I think we will chat at least once before the end of the week.
Okay.
All of
Sounds good.
the three of us at least. And thank you, Jeremy,
Thanks.
for wanting to do things with a fire under you, as always. Everybody have a great night.
You too. Thank you.